The story of Alexander the Great begins not on a battlefield, but in a quiet chamber where a young boy sat listening, watching, and imagining a future far greater than the world around him. Born in 356 BCE in the kingdom of Macedon, Alexander was the son of King Philip II, a man already reshaping Greece through military strength and political strategy, and Olympias, a woman of fierce ambition who believed her son was destined for greatness. From the very beginning, Alexander was different. He wasn't satisfied with simply being a prince. He didn't want to inherit power, he wanted to earn something greater than a throne. Under the guidance of Aristotle, he studied philosophy, science, medicine, and literature, but it was not knowledge alone that drove him. It was the idea of legacy, the idea that a man could live beyond his lifetime through the stories told about him. He became obsessed with the heroes of Homer's Iliad, especially Achilles. To Alexander, Achilles was not just a figure of myth, he was proof that glory could outlive death. And from a young age, Alexander made a quiet decision that would shape everything that followed. He would not live an ordinary life. He would be remembered. There is a story from his youth that captures this perfectly. A powerful horse named Bucephalus was brought before the court, but no one could tame it. The animal reared, kicked, and resisted every attempt to control it. Soldiers failed, trainers failed, even seasoned warriors stepped back. But Alexander stepped forward. He noticed something no one else had. Bucephalus was afraid of its own shadow. So Alexander turned the horse toward the sun, removing the shadow from its sight. The animal calmed, and Alexander mounted it with ease. It wasn't just courage that made that moment remarkable, it was awareness. Understanding fear, not fighting it blindly. That same instinct would later allow him to read battlefields, armies, and even kings. At the age of 20, his life changed forever. His father, Philip II, was assassinated under circumstances that still remain unclear. In an instant, Alexander inherited not just a kingdom, but a fragile and dangerous situation. Greece, which Philip had united through force and diplomacy, was ready to break apart. Rivals saw opportunity, enemies saw weakness, but Alexander didn't hesitate. He moved with speed and precision that stunned everyone around him. Revolts were crushed before they could spread. Alliances were secured or eliminated. And when the city of Thebes rebelled, Alexander made a decision that would define his rule. He destroyed it completely. The city was reduced to ruins, its people killed or enslaved. It was a brutal act, but it sent a clear message to the rest of Greece: resistance would not be tolerated. From that moment forward, no one doubted him again. With his authority secured in Greece, Alexander turned his attention to something far greater: the Persian Empire. This was the largest and most powerful empire in the known world, ruled by Darius III. It stretched across continents, rich in resources, defended by massive armies. For most leaders, the idea of invading Persia would have seemed impossible. For Alexander, it was inevitable. In 334 BCE, he crossed into Asia with an army of around 40,000 men. It was a bold move, bordering on reckless. He was vastly outnumbered, far from home, and facing an empire that had defeated countless challenges before him. But Alexander understood something that many did not. War is not just about numbers. It is about movement, momentum, and the ability to make decisions faster than your enemy. His first major battle came at the Granicus River. Without hesitation, he led the charge himself, riding directly into the enemy lines. It was risky, even dangerous, but it set the tone for his entire campaign. He was not a king who commanded from the rear, he fought alongside his men. He bled with them, and because of that, they followed him without question. Victory at Granicus opened the door to Asia Minor, but the real challenge came at Issus. There, Alexander faced Darius himself. The Persian army was massive, far larger than anything Alexander had faced before. The battlefield was narrow, leaving little room for maneuvering. But Alexander didn't focus on the size of the army. He focused on the man leading it. As the battle unfolded, Alexander saw an opening, a brief moment where the Persian line was vulnerable. Without hesitation, he drove his forces straight toward Darius. It was a direct strike, aimed not at the army, but at its heart. Darius fled. And when a king runs, the battle is already lost. This moment changed everything. The Persian Empire, once seen as invincible, was now exposed. Cities began to fall, territories shifted, and Alexander's reputation grew, not just as a conqueror, but as something more. But victory in open battle was not enough. Alexander knew that resistance had to be broken completely. This was proven during the siege of Tyre, one of the most difficult challenges of his campaign. Tyre was an island city, heavily fortified and surrounded by water. It was considered nearly impossible to conquer. Most generals would have bypassed it, choosing to avoid a long and costly siege. Alexander did the opposite. He ordered the construction of a massive causeway, extending from the mainland to the island. It was an enormous undertaking. His men worked under constant attack, building the structure piece by piece while facing arrows, fire, and counterattacks. It took months, but Alexander never gave up. When the city finally fell, it wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. There was no fortress he wouldn't breach, no obstacle he wouldn't overcome. From there, he moved into Egypt, where something unexpected happened. He wasn't resisted, he was welcomed. After years under Persian rule, the Egyptians saw him as a liberator. He was crowned pharaoh, embraced as a ruler, and even worshipped as a divine figure. At the oracle of Shiva, he was declared the son of Zeus. Whether he believed it fully or not, it changed how others saw him, and how he carried himself. He was no longer just a king. He was becoming a legend in his own lifetime. The decisive moment of his campaign came at Gaugamela. This was Darius's final attempt to stop him. The Persian king assembled a massive army, carefully choosing the terrain to give himself every advantage. Everything was in his favor, except Alexander. As the battle began, the Persian forces stretched wide, attempting to surround and overwhelm the Macedonians. Dust filled the air. The sound of thousands of soldiers clashing echoed across the field. But Alexander remained calm. He moved his forces strategically, drawing the Persians out of position. And when the moment came, he struck, once again driving directly toward Darius. And once again, Darius fled. This time, there was no recovery. The Persian Empire collapsed. Alexander entered Babylon, then Persepolis, the heart of Persian power. The wealth, the scale, the history, it was all his. And yet, even standing at the center of the greatest empire in the world, he was not satisfied. He pushed further, into Central Asia, into lands unknown, into regions where traditional warfare no longer applied. His enemies fought differently, using guerrilla tactics, avoiding direct confrontation, forcing him to adapt. And he did. He began integrating local customs, adopting elements of Persian culture, even marrying Roxana, a noblewoman from the region. He wasn't just conquering anymore, he was trying to unify. But this shift created tension. His Macedonian soldiers, who had followed him from the beginning, began to feel that he was changing. Becoming less like them, more distant, more imperial. The further east they went, the harder it became. When they reached India, they faced new challenges, unfamiliar terrain, war elephants, relentless conditions. And after years of fighting, something finally broke. His army refused to go further. For the first time, Alexander faced resistance he couldn't overcome, not from an enemy, but from his own men. He stood before them, knowing he could force them forward. But he didn't. He turned back, not defeated, but reminded that even the greatest ambition has limits. When he returned to Babylon, he stood at the height of his power. His empire stretched across 3 continents. His name was known everywhere. And then, suddenly, it ended. At just 32 years old, Alexander died. No clear heir, no plan for succession. His empire, built through years of relentless conquest, began to fracture almost immediately. His generals fought over it, dividing it into pieces, each claiming a portion of his legacy. The empire itself did not survive. But something else did. His influence. Greek culture spread across the lands he conquered, blending with local traditions, creating a new world, the Hellenistic Age. Cities he founded became centers of learning and trade. Ideas moved across borders that had once been closed. In a way, Alexander didn't just conquer the world. He connected it. And that is why, more than 2,000 years later, his name still carries weight. He didn't just seek power. He sought something greater, to be remembered. And in that, he succeeded. Alexander,